Hey, welcome to Agility Matters. This is where we speak about why flexibility, adaptability, and responsiveness in an organization really does matter. Today is podcast number 1, and we're kicking off with a lean business coffee. We're doing this online. A bit of context. New Zealand went into lockdown 4 hours after this conversation. So not only were our guests getting ready to lock down with their families, but they were worrying about their teams and what should come of that. I hope you enjoy. We went through 5 different topics, mostly around the mindset and trust issues for our teams working at home. Awesome. So how do we feel about breaking the face-to-face principle? I guess what I was trying to get at with this is a feeling, because I think pragmatically we know that all the principles can be broken at any one time, but this work from home buzz has now become so pushy, almost, I feel, that it's not only people trying to sell online training, they're trying to sell Jira setups, they're trying to sell working from home software, that people have forgotten that there was a reason why that was brought in. And I guess I want to put it out there. How do we feel about breaking it and moving forward?
I think the term breaking it, I guess that's kind of weighing in the first instance in saying the fact that it's happening less often is potentially, it implies maybe it's not a good thing. I think increasingly, and I've worked in a global company where I've had teams in the States as well as here in New Zealand. But even where I'm working at the moment, I've got teams spread between Christchurch, Wellington, and Auckland. It's rare to have everybody in the same team, literally face to face, and we have to convince organisations to invest in things like big room planning and travel and accommodation to achieve that. I think it's definitely a good principle, and I've always find that the conversations are much more effective because you don't just have tone, you don't just have the visuals, but you get a better sense of people being present. So I think you can have more honest conversations.
I agree. I like what you said though, David, regarding about big room planning. How does it make you feel now that big room planning is being done online? What could happen, I guess, if people realize that it can be done online? How much difficult will that conversation be in the future?
It is. So we're running it this week, and it's now called BOP, Big Online Planning, of course, instead of BRP. And actually, people have kind of, because we've had to invest in getting a new tool to sit alongside Jira, so people have got interested in trying out the tools. But there's already feedback that even with Zoom and having Zoom rooms and whatever, you're still restricted really to having like a singular conversation in each room. It's not as rich as when you have 100 people in a big room or a series of rooms together, and you can have a whole bunch of different conversations and come to solutions and then bring those solutions together and synthesize them. I think there definitely from senior leadership, there will be a push to say, oh, that was a bit cheaper. Why can't we do that every time? So I think we need to find those social stories. That in some conversations today, I said to somebody was saying the example I just gave you, how it's not as rich as because of all those reasons. And I said, make a note of that when you've got examples of where it's better to have people face to face. We need that as evidence so that we don't lose the ability to do it. But I reckon the future is going to be more of a blend. I don't think that we will get to do in-person big room planning every quarter. It may well end up being a mix that alternates or something.
It's a fair point.
Inderdip, what do you think?
I think this is going to become a norm soon. So this is, you won't be face-to-face anymore. So it's like, so probably I think it's kind of, if you, in like the company I work in, so it's like they trust their people so much. So it's like you give the accountability to people, and it's like, because it's such a nice atmosphere, so it's quite a normal thing as it is. So people kind of, there's not many face-to-face, not every time we have a kind of face-to-face kind of conversation. So there are remote many times. So I'm okay, but it depends where you are. So if you are some other place, probably, the culture of the company will drive how easily it will become when you are not face-to-face, and the other,
I think that's a
remote
fabulous
or
point.
online will work well. So I think it drives from the top to the bottom. So it's like a better culture.
Actually, not be so detrimental to the outcomes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think because, I think it just, I was contracting before, so it's kind of worked in different companies, and you see the culture. My current role, or the place where I work, it's like such a beautiful culture I've never seen anywhere else. So it's like, it gives everybody, it empowers people to, do their best, and, and you can just trust them, and so it's just worked so well.
And Inderdip, you keep talking about the culture. I'm looking up your LinkedIn profile. Where the hell do you work? No, joking aside. Of my 2 cents worth. To be honest, back to this statement, I really think we have an opportunity to not break this. I think this is still an unbreakable principle or a value where we just need to sense make. Back then, technology wasn't as good. And I personally, my interpretation or my understanding is more a holistic level. I think it's talking about people talking to humans. How we talk, whether it's on the phone, literally face-to-face physically, or face-to-face over video chat, talks about body language, tone of voice, being candid, and sharing feedback. And I think this is where the concept comes from. So I guess to answer your question, my challenge would be, we should not be putting doubt into the values and the manifesto and the principle. I think it's still upheld, but the changing times. If I have to compare it to religion, it's like the Spanish Inquisition. It's the same Catholicism, but now it's a little different than it was pre the Spanish Inquisition. I think we have a responsibility from a wave 2 kind of thing. But that's my take on it.
No, it's a good take. I've just added an action, just to let you guys know. The action is to run another experiment survey across everyone else. And the question will be, can our culture in New Zealand handle such a change long term as opposed to short term? I think it'd be quite a cool action to take out of this. Cool. Any other last comments from anyone on this one?
What did you think?
I actually agree. I think it's a principle that I don't mind breaking, and I'm quite happy to break it depending on the maturity of the organization.
Beautifully timed. Wow.
You've done this before, Michael.
I have not, but it does sound pretty cool, doesn't it? All right, so I just dragged us across. We've discussed this one. Awesome. And there is an action out of that. I would love to actually get our LinkedIn friends and actually see if so that we kind of hit the nail on the head of what are the repercussions of this next 4 weeks and how that could have long-term detrimental effects on organizations, and how do we bring that back to actually, is the outcome still going to be achievable? We'll have a think of KPIs on that. So the next one is how to address managers' nervousness around remote working teams. Who was that one?
I think that was mine.
Awesome. And off you go.
Cool. I did the initial spiel. It's really I'm curious to get your ideas and your experience to share. What have you guys done to address manager nervousness? The scenario here is I've got a manager who loves his team, thinks they're great, but gets nervous. So suddenly he's showing up differently with a lot more check-ins, more meetings. When the premise is I want to connect more with my team, but when I listen to his choice of words and his language, he's really nervous about them skiving off and going to the beach and not doing their work or not contactable. Have you guys had that experience, and what have you done about it?
I must admit, I've had that quite a bit. I always come down to the fact that what was the root cause? And I always come down to the fact that the root cause is a trust issue. And no matter how much we say we trust and we say we're building a people-centric culture, these kind of environments allow us to really open our eyes to the fact that we don't trust our employees. We don't trust their outcomes. We can't let go of the reins. And if we did let go of the reins, we would be sacked. Would that be fair to say?
So how do you address it? Do you do it from the team up and do a retro and try to voice it, or go straight to the manager and just be candid? Have you had any success?
Yeah. I always feel like if you go to the team, you could be undermining the manager. And especially if they're a manager as opposed to a leader, they could end up getting more ingrained in other different behaviors. For me, I go straight to the manager. I have one-on-one coaching around this. I identify that the mindset that you're bringing to this table is one of I and me, as opposed to we and our. And normally I can identify that in not only the terminology that they're talking about, but the outcomes that they're driven, and they feel that they are responsible. So 2 options normally come out of this for me personally. 1, they feel genuinely responsible, normally because they are. And 2, they have a lack of trust because of some incident in the past. So those 2 things can be brought about quite easily when you say that actually the outcomes will be greater if we actually do trust the team, as long as they create their own objectives and KPIs. That's my caveat. So I have the same problem at the moment, is I have no KPIs and therefore no one's doing any work. That's my view. What about you, David?
Yeah, I think I've in my last few roles been incredibly fortunate, and I guess because they've been senior roles, there's been less with the managers that have been overseas. There's been less of that kind of feeling of being watched over. But for example, I know when my wife works at Koa they were not prepared for this because they hadn't done any preparation, and they really, really restrict people working from home, and it comes down to a lack of trust. But the question is how to address it. I think we have a unique social experiment going on right now, in that this is forced on us. And I believe, I hope, my aspiration is the vast majority of managers that are supremely uncomfortable with the idea that their team are out of sight will be pleasantly surprised at how productive their teams can be. And the fact that they're not slacking off all the time, even making allowances for the fact that some people have children and other distractions. I believe coming out of this, things won't be the same again. I don't think for most organizations and for most people, we will go back to how it was before. And I think there will be an increasing reliance of a mix that includes more remote working.
I agree with that.
Yeah, probably it'll end to that, because we all are in the same situation. And I think companies, when they go back to their normal state, then they would like to get something out of this in terms of their productivity and what has changed and how things have gone. So if they look at, probably, yes, David, you said rightly. So I think it'll be their productivity chart or their, how effective they were. That is probably going to go up, because probably I think there is another factor as well. There's nothing else to do. So, yeah.
Now, I like what you said, David. Inderdip, you're right. I mean, the productivity charts are there because data-driven results can build trust. But David, you made a good point. This is being forced on us. So even the biggest naysayer will find a way around this. And after the first 2 weeks of being cynical, they will come to terms and they will see the light, or, at least Google, how do I manage a team remotely and get ideas and get a way around it? This could be a changing point for New Zealand, to be honest, for the world.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
Does anyone believe that maybe it's going both ways? in the fact that we identify that the trust is not there on the employees, but do we feel that maybe it's because the employees don't trust the manager?
Both ways.
I think it comes down to the culture, as I say, I've worked in different companies. So it's like you can clearly see where they say, oh, we don't kind of trust people who are working remotely, it's like, and then stop everybody working from home. So it's like, because they don't trust. And then that's how, people start behaving. Basically, you're not giving them power to shine. Basically, you don't empower your team. So it just comes down to that. It's like if you empower everybody and say, oh, we completely trust you, people just rise up to that. Very nicely.
Well, I think it's interesting the way you asked the question, Mike. I think there's a good sense sometimes that a good way to gain trust from somebody is actually to extend trust to them. And so it is bidirectional, absolutely. I think the problem though is that there is a power play, and therefore if your manager, especially if it's a manager senior junior relationship rather than first among equals sort of thing, there's an inherent, if somebody is withdrawing trust, that potentially it encourages the sort of behavior that the manager is concerned will happen, because he doesn't trust us anyway, or she doesn't trust me anyway, then I might as well, hung for a sheep as a lamb, as the saying used to go.
I like that. Can I just wrote down a nice little circle. Can I explain my circle to you guys? Yeah. So there's a lack of trust that's based on insecurity. The insecurity is based on a feel of responsiveness or responsibility or hopelessness. If we show that the team works better as a team as opposed to individuals working with individuality, and then have the leader show the trust to that team, and then allow them to have objective settings with KPIs, that should lead to delivery of work or not. And if we're delivering work, it will lead to trust. If we're not delivering to work, it will actually validate their hypothesis that these guys don't do any work. Does that sound fair?
I like it, yeah.
It's a nice experiment.
I'm willing to try that. Should I draft that up on a one-pager so we can see a nice little pre-diagram to give it a go?
Yeah. That could be action of sharing, like a root causes or root issues.
Awesome. Okay, let's crack into the next one. How to get the team to appreciate the fluffy side of connecting as a human when remote, when they don't believe. That's Ammar. And
yes.
Go.
Okay, we'll see if this has any traction. A quick 20-second reminder. So this is my way to address the potential loss of connectivity when you do work remotely. We're looking at 4 weeks or longer. So I set up this weekly call. So once a week, I took it from Simon Sinek's example of leading this team. And the first day of the week, they get on and discuss what they call a check-in. So they talk about what's top of mind, what's scaring me, high fives across the team. And then they go around the team talking about, reminding themselves, why do they do what they do? And it's basically like customer centricity, that last one. So it sounded great, but this is Simon Sinek's team, right? They're all sold into it. Now, from where I sit, I really believe and have seen that when we do it, we'll feel it. When we feel it, we'll connect as humans. And I'm hoping in my head, my little noise says, oh, Mario, thank you later, force them to do it. But we all know that's not how you do things. What do you guys think? Do I do until they believe, or do I keep selling until they let me do?
I'm always on the approach of keep selling until you get permission. It is a longer way. I just know from my personal point of view that if you don't get buy-in from a team, then individuals in that team, some of them will basically buy in because you told them to, some will not, and that could reciprocate some behavior that will lead to them trying to disengage from anything else you have afterwards. So the one thing you're trying to push on them could end up hurting the other things that they may want to do. So I'm a big believer in the ADKAR approach, but manipulated for coaching. So show value, ask permission, deliver what they need to deliver, and then hold them accountable. But that's
I love the fact that you mentioned that, because this is one of the things where it's hard to show value. You can only feel value.
Yeah. So maybe why don't we pivot a little bit? Then how do we show value on the fluffy side of connecting with humans, so human-to-human contact, and how that increases objective deliveries because we're humans? I mean, we're hitting psychology a little bit. Anyone got any thoughts on that?
I used to be the one who would say, "Oh, this is all rubbish," and I don't believe in, But as I kind of gone through my journey, and I have realized this is very important. Sometimes you have to do certain things, and then people will start going with you. It's like you believe in that, but how to kind of get the whole team to do that, because it was kind of not my cup of tea. It was like, no, these are all, very top of my head, basically. I don't believe in these, but I have realized they have their values. So it's like, some people might not be interested at any point, but, it helps the team if you keep on doing those things,
So do I convince? So your thoughts, when you look back and when you did it, did you come around because someone forced you and experienced it, or did somebody take the time and try to explain the journey, and then you said finally, okay, I'll try it?
No, it wasn't a journey. Somebody did it, and I said, "Oh, what a rubbish lot of things." It's like, it didn't kind of appeal to me, but I had to go through that journey myself to realize, no, it has its own value.
Okay.
And it makes sense to do those things with the team. I do that sometimes now, but not as often as I would like to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But to get them on board, Ammar, it depends on what kind of people they are. If they are mostly on the feeling spectrum, then it's more about showing the impact of their ways. If they're more on the logical spectrum, which is kind of what we get a lot of in developers, there are many meta-analyses that show that relationships lead to better networks lead to better creativity, innovation, and overall delivery. So I normally print these off, slam them on the desk, and go, "I'll talk to you about it tomorrow." Which is, they'll look at me like, "Oh, whatever," and then they'll see the positive correlation between, being friendly to someone in the meeting room. And there's actually a really good example of this around why we have to have informal conversations before we start work. It's rude because humans don't like it. Relationships build networks, build financial performance. Yeah. I'll send it through to you, actually, that paper I'm thinking about.
Please, thank you. And guys, on the Zoom chat, I shared the link if you're ever keen to see an example, that Simon Sinek thing that really got me motivated to actually make it happen. But we won't go any further. But yeah, if it's a cup of tea, enjoy it.
Yeah, so I'll send you at least one through.
Just added it as a comment for the card.
Sorry, go ahead.
Good point. I'll do it for you. Don't worry. So you could add the comments into the cards, Ammar? That's what they were saying?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering. I thought the card would be lost. We can't access it after this call is over. That's cool. Thank you. Thanks, David.
No, you're welcome. Look, it's. I think this is an interesting in the normal situation that we have been operating in. Of course, we have a range of thinking styles, behavioral styles, interaction styles, and so on. And I think it's more effective to appeal to the way that people think. So appealing to logic for people that are driven by that, and appealing to feelings for people that are driven like that. And it's not a dichotomy, it's richer than that. Again, though, my hypothesis is that in the current situation, even people that believe that they are truly capable of high productivity alone will, unless they are very, very rare, will actually begin to miss that human interaction, so that when we do have, once this gets passed in probably longer than a month's time, that we will actually, people will relish that more, at least for a period of time. And I think if we can seize on that, not to say, aha, I told you so, but to offer some reinforcements to help build that muscle memory of the social muscle.
So you're saying wait till there's a need, because we see it coming doesn't mean they see it coming, and then introduce it? Or are you suggesting play with it, and then whoever comes, don't enforce it, but once you create, then they'll come and say, that felt good, I'll keep coming?
Yeah, and I think, judging by developers' sense of humor and things like that, I think if they see in social channels and things like that that people are actually having a good time, not sort of being all touchy-feely or not being solely serious or whatever, again, there's that blend. So absolutely, we need to be doing what we can now, I think, to support people, and we can't force people to do it, but we can encourage them. I think over the coming weeks, people will get pulled to that because they need that human interaction, not just in the one-to-one thing. And then when we are back together after this, they'll actually relish it even more in person, I think.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, this is going remarkably well. We have time for one more?
Yeah, looks like it.
Because I still would like to reflect at the end of the day. That'd be great. So look after well-being of agile teams.
Yeah, that's me.
Inderdip, up to you.
Yeah, so in this time, basically, I was thinking it's easier to, catch up with people when you are working in the same space, to just see how they are going and how things are working. But now I think it's a stressful time for everybody otherwise as well. So it's like, how do I, make sure that people are doing well, and I have a past experience where one of my teammates, she was so stressed, and it was just because I started talking to her and I realized she's just kept on crying for half an hour, and she just said, listen to me, just, this, but it was just listening to her, and it wasn't a big issue, but for her, it was a big issue. So it's like, how do we make sure that everybody is feeling good in this space? As a Scrum Master, I feel like I have to be stepping up somehow, but I don't know how.
Tough one.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that was obviously quite a moving experience for you to have shared with your team member. And I felt that quite keenly. Ammar, you were about to say something.
No. I was first going to thank you for bringing it up, because it is important. We take care of each other and we take care of our teams. Let's see. So you asked the question, what ideas?
Yeah.
Well, I listened to you, and just looking at how we work our teams, I'm just reflecting on our families. My kids are remote from me, and what I do is I actually create a standing space. So I actively, just to share on what I do, is I actively call my kids every evening at 7:30 p.m. Sometimes I get oh, Dad, leave me alone. Other times, oh, thanks for call. Other times it's oh, Dad, today at school somebody bullied me. So in this remote state, I would probably reflect what I do with other human beings, people I care about, is I create that standing space, which is comfortable and it's static and it's known. So if anything was to happen, they know that at the same time, every night, they get a phone call from somebody. And I'm never going to take it personal and say, oh, I'm okay, don't want anything. That's okay. I'm letting them know I'm around. And then, my son hasn't opened up yet. My daughter opens up fully. She looks forward to the phone calls. My youngest 6-year-old, I talk to him and we just share funny videos and FaceTime emojis. So if I was to answer that question, I'd say, yes, how would you look after them is have a standing, rigid time where you connect with them. And sometimes there'll be nothing, other times there'll be nothing. And that could be an easy, quick way to do it.
Yeah. That's really good.
I agree. And I'd like to thank you, first of all, for being a people-centric Scrum Master. That's always good to have. It's quite rare. For me personally, it is a little bit rare. It gets to the point where people are pushing Scrum metrics on people more than actually the people side of things. But that's the conversation for next week. Tools and process. I'm a big believer in making sure that you have them as family-centric as possible. So although we see the lovely, funny video going around of someone going to the toilet on Zoom, but Zoom's great. Zoom is great. Things that create connections are great. I love making sure your tools and processes are correct. If they're not, just move to different tools. Daily connections, I think, are now more imperative than ever. I'm not always the biggest fan of actually daily stand-up. I don't think it's a requirement, but I do believe that daily connections right now, face-to-face, are really good. I'm doing weekly one-on-ones, and it's not work-related. It's how are you feeling? Not what are you doing, how are you feeling? And I'm basing all my thought process on empathy. So I'm trying to understand their thought process, their day, asking them how they are. Are they arguing with their dog? Did they see someone in the bushes? I'm asking them questions that are more about empathizing with their life. And I think that's how not only do you get through these next 4 weeks, but that's how you build a better relationship with your team moving forward, personally.
Okay.
Does that help?
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. I think these are great tips. Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting better at that.
Oh, right. It's really great.
I've already extended it. Sorry, guys. I didn't realize I pressed the button; it extended straight away. That's the problem when you're the main person.
There were two thoughts I had around this. One is it touches a little bit on what you said, Mike, in that all too often there's a risk that Scrum Masters have fallen to be junior PMs or process driven people. And I think there's a coaching side, a people-centric side to the role of Scrum Master that needs to be deepened. And I think that's critical to this question in terms of how we do this. I think also in the conversations I'm having with people in my team now, my first question is often, if I know they've got kids or whatever, it's actually asking something about their situation that is not work and task related, because that brings them out of the work that they might be doing before the call and settles them, so that if they are concerned, they should feel more open to kind of talk about that. I've got a question which is we don't have time for.
That's okay.
So I'll pause there.
One thing I would say to everyone though is be aware of this empathy we're giving our teams. I would ask you to think about who lives alone right now. So for me personally, I don't like everybody, but I've gone through my entire list of contacts and I remember everyone who used to promote living alone. And I'm just sending them messages, very similar things we're doing to our teams. And it's because in the next 4 weeks, they may joke about things, but it's not pretty being alone. So, and then double dip that. Is anyone of your team members living alone? Because you probably put more time on them.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.